Good evening. Dunedin had 2 gas emergencies today on opposite sides of the city. While they were unconnected, they each caused disruption and provided emergency services with a hectic morning. Mark Price with details.
It all began at about 6 o'clock this morning when an explosion shook the houses and shops around the Gardens Corner in North Dunedin. Throughout the morning, escaping gas was allowed to burn as workmen attempted to stop the flow of gas from a damaged underground main. It's believed the gas was ignited by a fault in electricity cables which share the same underground trench. People were moved out of dozens of houses and shops, but by lunchtime the emergency was over. Meanwhile, across town in Caversham Valley Road, there were more flames from a gas leak. A Ministry of Energy official is here to investigate the cause of the incidents.
Telecom South has cut more than 80 people from its branches around the South Island. Dunedin takes the heaviest losses, with 40 losing jobs, while Nelson and Invercargill each lose 21. The redundancies are in the finance, credit control and computer services departments. Telecom's Linda Harrison says they're part of the overall functional rearrangement of Telecom South, which will make Christchurch the main centre for finance. She's ruled out any more job losses in the immediate future, but won't speculate on what will happen in the long term. A petition is about to be launched in Invercargill, opposing changes at the city's new library. In a major restructuring, the position of children's librarian is being done away with, and the New Zealand Library Association is among those who believe the city's children will suffer as a result.
Up go the wishes. That's right. And the story time is all finished.
In fact, it's not. Internationally recognised storyteller Elizabeth Miller will still be able to create her special brand of magic, but not in the role of children's librarian. In a major library reorganisation, that job, along with others, has been done away with in a move towards cost efficiency and more streamlined procedures.
Until now, we've really been doing 2 things for children in the library. We've been lending books and we've been running children's programs. But in terms of the new legislation, it makes much more sense to separate those 2 activities and say we are in the business of lending books and we are in the business of running children's programs.
The changes have won some unsolicited support from library staff, but have been condemned by librarians working elsewhere in Invercargill.
Well, as a librarian, I'm quite horrified that this is the one council in the country who have decided to disestablish a specialist children's librarian position. I have been in children's work for part of my career. It's a highly specialised field. The development, the maintenance, the promotion of a children's collection must be done by a specialist children's librarian.
That view shared by teacher librarian Kay Ryan and Southland's district reading advisor Patsy Lambert.
I think the children of Invercargill are entitled to a children's librarian who has those special skills. Other cities have seen fit to have a children's librarian, such as Christchurch, Timaru and Dunedin, and I think that Southland children are entitled to that same specialised service.
Although the appointment's still to be confirmed, it's expected former children's librarian Elizabeth Miller will become the library's first children's community services officer.
That job is there really to develop this role of running children's programs. Initially in the library, in connection with the children's library, but not confined to that, because we think there are other areas in community services that this could be of advantage.
The new position of community services officer that has been talked about is somehow being a total replacement for the young people's librarian. I cannot agree with. The community services job is not even defined as a library job.
A lot of staff have been affected by the reorganisation, and those fighting the children's decision have a battle on their hands. They plan a high-profile campaign, but Invercargill District Council executives believe the decision will stand.
What I'm hoping will happen is that it'll settle down and people will give the new position a trial for 2 or 3 years, and quite frankly, I think 6 months down the track, people will say that this has been a good thing.
We are not convinced that the bureaucrats who have made the recommendation for disestablishment of the young people's librarian position have looked at all the factors that they should have looked at.
John McDermott with that report. Brilliant Dunedin weather meant a great weekend for 3 major events: the sailing of the Inter-Islander Aratika, the surf rescue boat competitions at St Clair Beach, and the Guy Fawkes celebrations last night. The last of the 3 ferries refitted by Sims Engineering sailed yesterday after a month in Dunedin. The Aratika now features slick, modern styling in line with the new image the Railways Corporation is trying to promote. She was farewelled by about 100 people when she left early yesterday morning. She's due back on Cook Strait on Tuesday. The boats at Dunedin St Clair Beach over the weekend were a little smaller, but the action in the South Island IRB Classics was spectacular. The events involved inflatable rescue boats, and teams were required to attach motor to boat, launch the craft and pick up a patient beyond the breakers. 37 crews from New Zealand and Australia took part. And to finish a perfect weekend, there were Guy Fawkes celebrations last night. It was the last time crackers will be available for public sale, and Dunedin residents marked the occasion sensibly. Despite a lack of runs in the weekend's annual cricket clash between Otago and Southland, there are signs this season might be an improved one for the local first-class team. Ken Nicholson reports there are some interesting new players who will provide competition for present Otago reps.
Of course, there were the old faces like Stephen Bock and John Lindsay still about to provide the bases for the Otago side. And the likes of Robbie Hill showed that he's still a most handy cricketer. But deliveries like this to Lindsay showed how hard it was to score runs, and Southland could manage only 121 for 9 in its 50 overs. But while the lack of runs was disappointing, the appearance of newcomers like Canterbury opener Ben Harris, also a brilliant fieldsman, will be heartening to the selectors. Peter Dobbs, who made his debut last season, and Cassim Ibadella got Otago away to a reasonable start. And Bruce Blair made sure of the Otago win with a game-high score of 36 not out. But most interest in the home batting came with the appearance of a South African, Michael Austin. He's come to Dunedin as a house surgeon on the medical front with an impressive cricketing background, having scored a double century and another century for Western Province in Currie Cup cricket. And that's cricket of a high standard.
The county players that come through every year say that county cricket is weaker than our first-class cricket there. So, I think it's very strong.
Well, with a background like that, I mean, obviously you'd be keen to play first-class cricket here.
Very keen to. Certainly if the opportunity presents itself to do that, I'd be very keen to do that this season.
So Blair and Austin went on in an unbeaten stand of 51 to provide the 7-wicket win.
And great cricketing weather. We'll be back tomorrow night. Good night.